been such a blessing to be part of the creative resonance of the Yaga this morning. We know there's a phenomena called resonance, which means when energies are tuned, they have what we call a constructive interference. They multiply, they amplify. That's what the laser is ultimately about. And I think what Sri Tathata was creating today was a laser effect for the good, for the future of life on earth. A lot of people ask me, you were a scientist, how are you an ecologist now? This morning a journalist said, what is making you move towards spirituality? I don't think we move towards spirituality. We are spiritual beings. And I'm very privileged that I was born into a family where that was the education. Not religious, but a spiritual training, where the gurus of that time, Anandamayi Ma, Swami Shivanand, the major teachers, and now we have a new generation of teachers giving basically a wake-up call to humanity. A wake-up call because fragmentation and division and separation are really becoming a major threat to our future, to the future of human beings as well as all beings on earth. Dr. Nambudri has also already talked about how contemporary science has actually overcome the dichotomy between mind and matter, spirit and body, spirituality and science. There is an obsolete science which we should have given up 100 years ago. The Newtonian, Cartesian, Baconian model of science, which falsely imposed on the world a thinking, a highly unreal thinking, that the world is made of immutable particles, all separate and disconnected, and fixed forever. As Newton said, God made the world of immutable particles which can't be broken. And we've been breaking them ever since. And at the end of it, there isn't a particle at all. There's just energy. My doctoral thesis, and I eventually had to do it as an interdisciplinary thesis, because it's assumed in physics you should just calculate, just compute, just use an equation to solve problems. And for me, physics was always about knowing the world. And what quantum theory has taught us, and that was the subject of my thesis, the subject that Dr. Nambudri talked about. It's called the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox, that you separate particles, they still absolutely instantaneously decide the state of each other. The Yaga today is based on the recognition of non-separability between the universe and our life on earth, between a divine consciousness and our daily existence. That was the invocation in the beautiful prayers that we've all been very, very privileged to be part of. While Newton thought of immutable billiard balls, and the only kind of action you could have was a forced action, of action by contact, quantum theory has talked about action at a distance, non-locality, non-separability. More importantly, we now know there's nothing like immutable things in the world. Everything's in dynamic change. The whole universe is a potential. That's the fundamental reality, a potential. And then we move out of the nervousness of change. We move out of the nervousness of separation. I have learned a lot in my ecological growing from our ancient texts. Ancient texts like the Ishopanishad, which says, Isha vasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat ten tekten bunjita ma grida kasya swidham. So beautiful that every being is an expression of the divine. Enjoy these gifts. Enjoy them. They're not saying, be miserable, be unhappy. Saying, enjoy the gifts, but with a sense of renunciation, with a sense of enoughness, with a sense of duty. Saying, shun greed, ma gridha. Shun greed. Do not appropriate others' share. In fact, this was the verse of Ishopanishad that inspired Gandhi to say, the earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed. This is what inspired Tagore in all of his writings about nature's abundance and our need to take our share, but not more than our share. Greed is basically a blinder. It's blind to the interconnections. It makes us blind to other beings and their share, and it makes us blind to the consequences of our action. That is why when Bacon talked, he said, he was the governor of New England, and he said, not Bacon, sorry, Boyle, he said, you've got to get rid of the idea that nature is sacred. The idea of Native Americans, and we are very privileged here to have a Colombian from the Kogi tribe. I respect them so deeply. They have such an amazing life and idea of the world. And some of them have come about how their areas are now targeted for mining. In every one of these ideas, a divine universe is a sacred universe. A sacred universe which asks us to tread lightly. And the beauty is, treading lightly actually creates a better life. It creates a more joyful life. It creates a more satisfied life. But Boyle said the idea of veneration of nature is an impediment to progress. And step by step, every aspect of us living sacred spiritual lives in a sacred universe are under assault. I work today. 40 years I have been working in the service of life on earth. Not because suddenly I said I'm going to be an activist. No. Because my dharma said it was not right that we chop down the trees of the Himalaya and let floods and droughts devastate the Ganges basin. So as a young student, I joined my sisters of the Chipko movement, the movement of hugging trees, of embracing life. That was my early training. And if today I've started Navdanya, and I was touched when I was told that the Havan has the havas of more than 60 herbs, including Navdanya, the 9 sacred seeds. And in every grain, in the tiniest seed, is the entire Navagaraha, the entire cosmos. That's the beauty of an integrated thinking, of Indira's net, where in the net, every node is a jewel reflecting everything else in the world. There is no separation possible. I started Navdanya to save seeds because for me, it's a dharma to save seeds. And I cannot accept to live in the adharma of treating the duty of saving seeds and sharing seeds and passing them on to future generations as a crime. It has been defined as a crime through intellectual property rights. The idea that a company comes, puts a toxic gene into a plant, and genetic engineering is also based on the old Cartesian thinking that genes are atoms. And you can move a gene and there'll be no difference made. But there is a difference. Because every cell, every organism, every ecosystem, and the entire planet is a self-organized universe unto itself. And this morning when we were talking to Dr. Krishna Kumar, he was talking about how this whole Maha has been self-organized. Normally an event of this kind, of this size, would have 100,000 policemen trying to organize you. Because when our dharma dies, then we get police states. Then we get external force. Then we get a determination from outside. So for me, it was unacceptable that seed be declared the invention and creation of companies. And they were doing it through introducing genetically engineered organisms that are called GMOs. I say GMOs actually means God move over. Creation, no place for you. Life begins when I pollute it and I load it with poisons. And talking about poisons, we are in the 30th anniversary of a deep tragedy that was not an accident when a pesticide plant in the city of Bhopal leaked 30 years ago. 3,000 people were killed immediately. Thousands have died since then. And hundreds of thousands of children are being born crippled today. I remember seeing a poster of the company called Union Carbide, which is now owned by Dow. And Dow is among the 5 giant chemical companies that now are controlling the seed. And the poster had Dow saying, Union Carbide saying, we have a hand in India's future. And they were pouring a red liquid onto an agricultural landscape. They had a hand in India's future, but not the kind of hand that India needs. Bhopal was totally unnecessary because we don't need poisons in agriculture. An agriculture that is done in service of the earth, make sure we give back to the earth a part of what she gives us, because she gives us so much. And a little part we give back. All the soil organisms have food. They create soil fertility far more than any chemical fertilizer can produce. And the chemical fertilizer companies actually were the same companies that made explosives during the war. The plant that makes nitrogen fertilizers is the same plant that makes explosives. And that's why so many times fertilizers are used as fertilizer bombs. The US security was once telling me at a dinner, oh, now we realize why there's so many bombs in Afghanistan, because to counter the Soviets, we poured nitrogen fertilizer as a bribe in the villages of Afghanistan, and now they just turn it into a fertilizer bomb. The pesticides were chemical warfare tested and tried in the concentration camps of Nazi Germany. The nerve gases, the 7, all of these, the sarin gas, were poison gases which then later became generations of pesticides. I have worked with the movement for justice in the case of endosulfan. Cashew doesn't need the spraying of endosulfan from the air, which was done by the plantation corporation. And 1,000 people died, hundreds of thousands of people crippled. There's a Supreme Court case still going on to implement the ban that is required by the International Stockholm Convention to phase out the persistent organophosphate. And this is an organic phosphate. We have an agriculture minister who constantly undermines the ban. He also undermines the moratorium on genetically engineered organisms, the GMOs. Parliament has said we don't need them. a parliamentary committee on agriculture. They studied the suicides we've had since seed, instead of being an expression of the diversity of an abundant earth. And seed became a patented intellectual property, genetically engineered. A GMO BT cotton seed was introduced. Since the seed monopoly started, we have lost 284,000 Indian farmers to suicide. Many to pesticide poisoning, and the rest drink the pesticide when they get into deep debt. Seed that nature gives it for us in abundance and freedom. She says, I give you one seed, it'll make 1 million for you. Millets, the ragis and the jwaris and the bajris and the jangoras, they're called millets because each seed makes 1 million seed. Millet comes from million. Can you imagine the power of one becoming 1 million? That's what a greed idea cannot bear. The abundance of the earth said, we will terminate the seed, we will genetically engineer it so it is sterile. We worked for a ban on these terminator technologies. But a hybrid seed doesn't renew either. Something that's renewable by its very nature, to turn it non-renewable just for super profits, in my view, is the highest level of adharma. It is a crime against the earth, it's a crime against humanity, it's a crime against biodiversity, and it is a crime against future generations. That's why I deal with these issues. My first trip to Palakkad was for Mailama, the woman who led the movement to shut down the Coca-Cola plant. She's no more with us. I pay tribute to her for her very courageous act. Because this morning, when the prayer was taking place, water was used repeatedly. This earth is 70% water. Our bodies need water. We are 70% water. Every plant is 70% water. Without water, there's no life. Palakkad was water abundant. And then came Coca-Cola mining 1.5 million liters a day, creating a water famine, and what they left was heavy metals. It's a trade secret, so we don't know exactly what they do to leave that kind of pollution, but every Coca-Cola plant, and we've had the studies done in Plachimada, in Kaladera in Rajasthan, in Banaras, all the plants have very, very shallow levels of water and very heavy contamination. And Mailama said, we can't keep walking further for clean water. They started. The courts, High Court of Kerala ruled water is commons, it belongs to the people. Eventually, between the movement of the people and the courts, the plant was shut down. I think it's the first time people's power shut down a Coca-Cola plant. In any case, I don't understand why that liquid is sold. You know, it's also started first during the Prohibition movement, because they used to put cocaine. The coke comes from coke. The wonderful kogi chew coca leaves as a sacred. But coke started this drink during the Prohibition movement and then went on during the war to increase their markets. Today they have entire governments captive. There is a very, very important law that has been drafted by the government of Kerala on the claims, on the damages that have been caused to the health of people, to agriculture because of the polluted and depleted water level. It's stuck in Delhi. Stuck in Delhi because the Delhi government thinks that defending the rights of those who destroy life and destroy the rights of people has become the mandate of the center. So they replaced an environment minister to put an environment minister who's an oil minister, so he would approve everything under the sun. And of course, they're not going to implement in a hurry this claims law. I would request everyone here to support the movement. They're fasting again. I couldn't go and join them, but I'm with them in spirit. 9 days of a fast, indefinite fast, to have a legitimate law implemented. And for those of you who are from other parts of the world, join them, support them. Because if this year Yaga is to unleash the energies of dharma, then containing adharma is part of that process. We need the energy, we need the clarity, we need the courage to be able to take the right actions. As far as agriculture is concerned, I know that we can produce more food by serving the earth. Agriculture has to become a spiritual duty to giving back to the soil, to protecting biodiversity, saving seeds, conserving water. If we just do that spiritual duty, all our needs for healthy, nutritious, abundant food get met. We do that kind of agriculture, we can produce food for 2 Indias. Globally, we can produce food for 14 billion people. And they keep trying to make us scared. There might be 9 billion and therefore eat more poisons. How are more poisons more food? It's only a Cartesian mind that could make that jump. Every year we've built up an Earth University to learn more about how to live at peace with the earth. We offer a whole month's course on the A to Z of ecological agriculture, because growing food non-violently and eating non-violently is part of one indivisible ecological duty, scientific duty, as well as a spiritual duty. The prayer this morning said, may the earth and our human body become part of the divine play. Isn't it beautiful? So all we have to do is understand the laws of nature, work according to them, not in our arrogance, with a very narrow mind, fragmented, divided, separated, where we have first the arrogance to say we are not part of nature, human beings are outside. Then we are conquerors and masters. Then we can just keep developing new tools of attacking nature, as if it's not an attack on ourselves. All those poisons we put into our food don't just kill an insect, they kill beneficial species. 75% of the bees of this planet are gone. 75%. And when the European Union bans the pesticides that have led to their disappearance, the companies sue the governments. Because these days, corporations have become bigger than governments. But the most important thing is, while we say, this plant is sacred, the tulsi is sacred, everything is sacred, the soil organisms are sacred, the corporations say no. There's nothing in the world, there are no people except us. Corporations have defined themselves to be persons with the highest rights. So there's a deep contest today between corporate laws for greed and violence and the divine laws of non-violence, peace, sharing, and abundance. The Maha Yaga is for unleashing our power to obey and serve those divine laws, and our energies to deal with the laws that come from a narrow mind. If fragmentation and division and separation have given us an ecological crisis and poverty, because we are poorer if nature's poorer. If there's no water in our wells, we have no drinking water. If our soils are desertified, we have no food. If our soils are poisoned, we have disease. But in a similar way, division, separation, and the distortion of spirituality to be presented as fragmented religion has also led to violence. A misreading that spirituality can lead to communalism. How can it when a Mahayagya like this is about joining all forces, making the entire earth family one family, working together for the betterment of all? The two things we need to now transcend. One is the Cartesian Newtonian paradigm of science that has pitted science against the earth, and a fragmented idea of religion that has divorced itself from spirituality, and then a politicization of those narrow divisions for political gains. I was so happy when Tathata said, we need to liberate spirituality from the caste hierarchy. Let everyone know the Vedas and recite the Vedas. There's a weak interaction. In physics, we have weak interactions and strong interactions. Weak interactions can be broken. There's a weak interaction between patriarchy, casteism, and an interpretation of religion. There's a strong interaction between that deep knowledge of us being members of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, of the earth family, and universal humanity. That is the strong interaction we need to develop more strongly. A deep science, an ecological science, is not an antithesis of spirituality. They're one and the same thing. So our task is so much easier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vandana Shiva, for that wonderful cascadal oration. Thank you so much. I request Dr. G. Madhavan Nair to give away a token of love and appreciation, a memento to Dr. Vandana Shiva.